This is The Voice of Russia in London. I'm Alice Lanyadoo. This week, as part of our series of interviews with Russians in London, I talked to Katrina Kolegaeva. Katrina, you describe yourself in your blog as a Russian living in London, writing about Soviet kitsch, sex in food and fat. This is a very tempting description. Is this how you see yourself?
I'm glad that's the way you see it, because that was the intention. I wanted to have a little bit of provocation, basically. But yes, I suppose I do see myself in some ways like this. I suppose if you read my blog, you'll see that a lot of what I write is kind of about the sensuality, the pleasure, the nostalgia of food. Essentially, yes, it's kind of about food and love. That's kind of essentially what it is, what I write about. It's about my own memories of childhood. It's about my present life. It's about the senses, the emotions that food brings. And obviously, because I'm Russian, because I have all those, sort of memories of Soviet past, I'm kind of trying to bring all of these things together. Was your mother a good cook? She was a good cook. She was a good cook. Like most mums, I suppose, she wasn't the most refined or sophisticated type of cook. She cooked at home, but she really loved it. And what I particularly remember about my mom, because she died now, is that she really cared about the way food looked. So I remember breakfast particularly, because you've probably seen my blog, I write quite a lot about breakfast. I have a thing about breakfast, and because most people rush, and I really love breakfast and kind of spending an hour and a half each morning, even when I can't really afford that time, making a really nice breakfast and kind of laying it out. And it's kind of about the colours and the textures and the feelings of it.
And do you think that British people realise how lovely Russian food can be? Do you think they're still stuck in stereotypes of salads that are 70% mayonnaise?
Yes, I think that is the stereotype, and I don't blame anyone for that, because partly stereotypes are there for a reason, right? Because a lot of Russian food is actually like that. So in a way, there isn't really anything wrong with that as such. But of course, basically Russia being behind a big solid curtain for a very long time. It's not just food. Lots of other things were a bit mysterious. So suppose what I try and do is kind of uncover that mystique a little bit and show all sorts of different sides to Russian Soviet food. So yes, it can be mayonnaise, but mayonnaise can be really delicious, can be homemade, and can be all those different things, but kind of just shown in a slightly different way.
So you throw parties, don't you, in London, special themed parties where you lay on extravagant meals, and do people turn up in costume? I think you've got one coming up that's dedicated to Cosmonauts Day. Tell me about that.
Very briefly, about a year and a half ago, I decided to do what's called a supper club in my own home. So I live in North London, very simple flat. And I just wanted to invite people, so open the doors of my house and just invite people and cook for them. And that went really well. I didn't do them very often, but it was a fantastic experience of kind of trialing and testing different things and also see how people respond to what I do and how I do it. And so a year later, I actually met another woman, also Russian, called Karina Boldyry. You probably know that she's published a book called Russia on a Plate, all about Russian food. The book is in English. And so we decided to team up. And so now we do these things, these big dinners, parties really sometimes, called Russian Revels, which are, they can be anything from really fairly fabulous kind of affairs, like hopefully the one that's coming up, which is all about space, the first man in space, Gagarin, and kind of futuristic food and all that kind of thing. But also sometimes they're quite intimate, so they're more about stories.
Do people dress up, is it?
Yes, they often do. We definitely encourage people to dress up. It's a very fine line between kind of having a fancy, whatever they call fancy dress party, and actually having a kind of fairly, I would like to think, fairly stylish gathering. So we definitely encourage people to dress, or at least make an effort to kind of indicate that they thought about the theme of the night and what it means.
What's the most outrageous thing that someone's done at one of your parties?
I do know that the party that's coming up, we're going to have, I know because some people told me in secret, one girl is going to wear a hat, kind of Lady Gaga style hat with Laika, you know, the first doggy, the first dog in space, as a kind of decorative piece on top of her hat.
So she's going to have a dog on her head?
Yeah, not the real one, but, you know,
a model.
Yeah. Toy, that's it. I was looking at toy, basically, right? So a little toy dog on her hat. So I know that one will be like a little tribute, if you like, to the first dog in space. And I also know that the other girl is actually, they're probably going to be like a pair wearing this kind of very skin-tight kind of silvery, leathery costume. So there's that one. And I remember the very, very first one that I did was actually really lovely because it was just in my living room for 12 people, and that was dedicated to the 8th of March, the International Women's Day. And it was actually really great because I kind of encouraged people to think about sort of more, I don't know, kind of 1930s, 1920s kind of, nap style. And so people dressed up. I remember one lady came in this kind of almost authentic kind of 1920s dress with a kind of a fur, again, dead animal. It's not exactly that I encourage dead animals on people's shoulders, but, it's still quite pleasing to see when people, take part. Because a lot of what we do, really, and that's a very important part, I suppose, of what we're trying to do with these dinners, is humour. And I think that is actually sort of answering your question about what Russian food really needs and the image of Russia. Is fun. It's the idea that actually Russian food can be sexy, it can be fun, it can be cheeky, and I suppose that's why I know it's a very pompous slogan we have on our website, something like Russian dinners with Slavic generosity, Soviet attitude, and British humour. I hate that tagline, but at the same time, I think that's basically what it is. We're trying to laugh really at ourselves first and foremost, and kind of do it with other people.
But how do you make sala, which is just pure animal fat, sexy? I know you're quite obsessed with this food stuff. How would you persuade someone in Britain to eat it?
Actually, you'll be surprised how readily people eat sala when you do it in the right way. Because I had a little kind of sala party because I came back from Ukraine last year with lots of different salas, and
You mean from different animals?
No, because sala, as far as I know, but even though it's a very interesting question, sala, as far as I know, is pork fat specifically. So, but we had them from different farms, from different ways of smoking, of curing, so different ways of kind of treating basically pork fat. And I had 12 people, and I think we only had one Russian in that group. Everyone else was totally unaccustomed to Russian cuisine, and everyone ate it. Everyone happily ate it. I think it's partly, well, first of all, not maybe presenting it exactly as pork fat, but you sort of basically start describing it. It's like prosciutto, which it is basically, right? So it's basically talking about, I think often they call pork fat, or that way of treating it, as like white butter. So it's basically like butter, which you kind of melt in, but a very delicate flavour. And I describe all of that, right? So before giving it to people, I talk about all of that. And people go with it.
And you're very slim. It obviously hasn't wrecked your figure.
I'm not exactly sure how slim I am. But, that's something that I also write about. The fact that, of course, for most of us, especially for women, it's a constant battle. All of us. I mean, I can't think of a single girlfriend of mine who kind of doesn't battle constantly of should I not, do I diet, do I not diet? So it's part of my life as well.
Do you cook a lot yourself at home?
I do cook a lot, pretty much daily, but I don't do anything elaborate, right? It's something very, very basic. So suppose because of my mom, because of the way that my family was, I grew up with kind of mom basically cooking. So, and also, in Soviet times, you didn't exactly have kind of lots of ready-made meals, so it's something kind of very natural to me. But it's something very simple, so I don't obviously create elaborate dinners for my husband every evening,
And he's English, is that right?
English,
and does he like Russian food?
He likes. To be honest with you, maybe I'm lucky, maybe he's lucky. He is very open to all sorts of different foods, so he's happy to eat whatever I make. And one of my particular proud moments I remember is he could always eat buckwheat, but he always used to say that, well, I can eat a little bit of it. Well, we've been together for 10 years now. He can eat a lot of buckwheat now.
Plenty of kasha.
Yep.
Katrina, when did you actually arrive in London?
1998.
And what do you like about the city?
I like the fact that in this city I am accepted for all the different things that I can bring in, that I may be or may not be. Perhaps because I'm a Russian, but actually because I grew up in Estonia. And obviously in Estonia and Baltic states generally, we did have quite a lot of tensions between different nationalities. It is incredibly gratifying almost, to live in a country, and this city particularly, that doesn't really mind. Clearly, I'm aware that there's lots of tensions. But me specifically, it just must have happened that when I came to this place, they took me. with open arms. So, and I love that. And obviously the diversity of London generally. Gosh, there's always things happening all the time.
But you must miss things about home, apart from the cooking, which you've talked about.
Do I miss home? My home is here. And so I suppose sometimes, and that's what I write about sometimes in my blog, you miss the idea of home. Because both of my parents are dead now. I miss that a lot. So you almost miss this kind of cocoon of safety, and something that you grew up with. I don't have that anymore. But at the same time, I don't really have that left behind in Estonia anymore. Just because I haven't been there for a very long time, I don't really have many relatives left. So it sounds very sort of sorrowful when I say it like this, but I suppose I'm trying to make my life here. And food is a really beautiful way of doing it.
What's your day job?
Another foodie thing. I work for a charity called the Soil Association. Obviously, a lot of people even in this country would know the Soil Association because they're the ones who certify organic food. So
they certify organic food.
Yeah. But they also they also do a lot of campaign and policy work around better sustainable food. My job specifically is to do with caterers. So I work with all sorts of large and small catering companies, so even kind of big multinationals, if you like.
To make food better and
more sustainable, more ethical. We're trying to basically encourage them to introduce things like, more local food. A lot of work that I've done in the past was with school food. So I actually know a lot about the school food in this country, which is a fascinating topic for me. And it's very kind of, actually, there are a lot of links to what I remember back in Soviet times. So it's an interesting
What kind of links?
It's actually quite surprising how similar a school meal may be in this Western developed industrial society and what I remember 25 whatever years ago when I was little in a little Soviet school. How many similarities, sometimes fairly awful similarities, but also sometimes really nice and kind of memorable similarities.
Hot puddings, mince.
Yeah, it's a kind of, it's also, I suppose it's something to do with institutionalized food, right? So clearly there will be lots of similarities between all these different settings. And also it's also on the budget, clearly, and it's also feeding lots of kids in a very short period of time. So it is quite interesting, but I can talk a lot about that, but it's a completely separate topic.
And it also strikes me that kids here may not have grannies or granddads who have got a little plot in their dacha where they do grow absolutely organic cucumbers or potatoes or whatever, and that still goes on in Russia.
Yeah, still a lot of people do that. And actually in Estonia specifically, I know that there was obviously quite a bit of a gap when people kind of stopped. A lot of people, kind of middle class people, felt that, well, we don't have to do that anymore. So they wanted to move away from it, right? And of course, as things go in the same way, the developments in Britain, people go back to it.
Would you like to have a dacha here where you could grow fresh vegetables?
You know what? I'm actually not a very good representative of that because I didn't grow up with dacha. Unusually, actually, because pretty much, it's true that probably about 80-90% of people in the Soviet Union, well, my kind of rough estimate, had an allotment or dacha of some kind. My family didn't. My parents were this kind of, I often call them kind of these Soviet hippies. And they were actually, they used to spend lots of time kind of, my dad used to play jazz. And so they were kind of, they thought that it was cool, if you like, to read lots of books, forbidden books, and kind of, not bother about all of that. We didn't have it, basically. And so I'm not used to it. And I grew up in a city. But now, of course, because a lot of people in London are really interested in kind of urban gardening and so on, I really hope that slowly I would be able to start growing a few bits and pieces.
That was Katrina Kolegayeva talking to me, Alice Lanyardo. This is The Voice of Russia in London. Stay with us.